There's a lot in it about the experience of migration, about arriving in a new country, about the fears and insecurities.
Yeah, I was writing the book when people were starting to come into Ireland as migrants, when Polish people, Nigerians, Chinese people were arriving in Dublin and were moving into parts of Ireland. And I noticed that Irish people were becoming uncomfortable about this, which I thought was bizarre, considering we had gone all over the world over 150 years and made ourselves at home everywhere. And in a way, that is part of the impulse behind the novel, just to show what it was like for one person who went away once. Don't preach, but just tell the story of one person, just how lonely she was at the beginning, just how she thought she was getting used to America, and how hard she was working. And then a crisis happens at home, and immediately she's back wanting to be home now, this minute. And now for everyone coming, I mean, for someone Syrian coming into Europe now, just the amount of worry over someone you've left at home or something you miss about home, that people think that you know, immigrants are somehow coming to sort of take things from us, but actually things have been taken from them. And so that there is an element in the film about trying to dramatize a story to remind the world of what migration is actually like in the first few years when it happens, that it isn't easy for anybody.
So how did the film come about?
I was in New York. Someone came up to me at a book fair and asked me were the rights available. And I wondered, who are you? And she said she was Finola Dwyer, that they had just made an education. And the next question I asked was, would Nick Hornby write the screenplay? Because he'd written the screenplay for An Education, which I thought was a really good screenplay. And she said, maybe. And I said, well, can you get back to me? And then about a week later, she came back to say, yeah, that Nick Hornby was willing to write the screenplay.
And we also see, wonderfully played by Julie Walters, the boarding house where the girls all live. Do we have that clip? Let's run that.
What is the matter with you girls now?
Nothing is the matter with us, Mrs. Keogh.
Is this all because Ailish has found herself a young man?
Ailish is a young man? We didn't know. She won't say anything about it.
And why should she? To you awful gossip mongers. Anyway, I met him on Saturday night when he called for Ailish, and he is a gentleman.
Will you tell us what you know about him, Mrs. Keogh? We know he's quite nice looking.
Didn't like his shoes much.
What on earth is wrong with his shoes?
They were a funny colour.
I tell you this much, I'm going to ask Father Flood to preach a sermon on the dangers of giddiness. I see now that giddiness is the 8th deadly sin.
With the Oscar nomination that she has, I mean, do you feel at all part of this Oscars debate around diversity? How do you feel about it?
Well, you know, I think it's been a big issue recently in Ireland about women in the theatre. And it's been a big issue in America now about diversity for the Oscars. Look, this equality agenda is our agenda. It is the agenda of the world we live in. And we have to really deal with it. It's not as though we can go on forever saying every Oscars, all these white guys and white girls are going to go up and get prizes, and everyone has to sort of watch this at home thinking, well, that's, you know, this must be the ideal, and I'm not, if I'm not white, the ideal. Well, I don't think we can go on with this. And I don't think we can go on in the way that women in the workplace or women on television has been a big battle. I think in the case of this, you're pushing an open door that I think people feel guilt already, and so they should. And so I think you're pushing an open door. It's a question of then working out the strategies, how this will simply fade and become something of the past pretty soon without having to go as far as a boycott.
The centenary for the Easter Rising is approaching in Ireland. How do you feel? What's going to be the feeling around that as we approach it?
My grandfather was involved in the rebellion and was imprisoned, was interned by the British in Wales afterwards. So it's very close to me. And my uncle was a sort of messenger boy in the town because he was innocent looking enough that he could get through the lines. And I suppose what's really important for us now is that we do have agreement in Northern Ireland between the political parties, so that if we celebrate or even interrogate or deal with an event which was violent, which was a small minority deciding to have a rebellion in the middle of a city, which caused death and destruction, that it will not have repercussions into now. It's just not as though, even if, no matter how we do it, it will not animate a new group of terrorists to start in Ireland. It looks as though that won't happen again.
Just a few months after that, a British decision on Europe could have massive implications for Ireland. What do you think would happen?
For me, as an Irish citizen, brought up in what I saw as a literal backwater, a conservative, Catholic-led, clerical country, when we joined the European Union with you in 1973, it was a great moment for us. We were actually coming from a very dark time in Ireland of insularity and poverty into a sort of prosperity that we are, in this moment, attempting to regain, some of it courtesy of the European Union. So I have great reverence for the European Union as an institution that has given great freedoms to its citizens. I would be really horrified at the idea that the country closest to us in so many ways, not only geographically, but so many of us have cousins and uncles, and the two governments now are so close. The idea of Britain deciding to move away from the European Union would weaken the Union. And I think that would be a real mistake for everyone in the Union and indeed for Britain.
Thank you very much.